Okay. Let's go ahead. The sound okay? Am I too loud? Am I okay? Good? Good deal. All right, we're back for session 2. Do I need to separate it? Okay. So the picture, actually, yes, I meant to say something about that. So this is a famous painting by Rembrandt about the prodigal son, or the return of the prodigal son. So it's pretty cool just to even just study that picture. And you can't see, there's some of it that didn't transfer well into PowerPoint, but you can see like the mother back in the distance and different things like that in the original. But pretty cool thing. So Thomas went to get Dory, but tomorrow morning they're going to share, to start out our time, about connecting with God through the arts, which I'm really looking forward to hearing about that, because that is not my forte, but I'm excited to learn and how they connect with God that way. So yeah, we're back here. Why don't we do this, kind of warm up our brains. Let's have somebody read kind of our context setting passage here from the first part of Luke 15. And then we'll pray.
All the tax collectors and sinners were approaching to listen to them, and the Pharisees and scribes were complaining, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them."
Anybody remember the Greek word for complain? Gongudzo, yeah. Just start going, I'll do that and you'll get close. Yeah, murmuring and whining, really discontent. Okay, and then we had those 2 other parables, short ones, about the lost sheep, the lost coin, and then a man had 2 sons, he also said. Let's start out with this and then we're going to pray. So just, obviously this was not too long ago, but I know not everybody had a chance to share, and our brains do different things as we're just kind of doing other stuff, distracted, other things, so things gurgle to the surface. Is there anything that struck you from the first act that you haven't shared about or you just want to highlight? First act being the first teaching, the thing we just did.
For me, just the whole first part of that was just such a different point of view.
Yeah.
Because it was always kind of, the young son is POS, and that's it. I didn't think about everybody else and how that impacted everybody else.
Yeah.
And so I think it was really kind of mind-blowing.
Sweet. Anybody else have something they want to share with the group? Well, let's pray. Several people can pray. And then I'll close this and we'll get into the second act.
He shows us here as he just shares this parable. I think that we get to study it and learn about your love for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that we can just have some major key takeaways from this study.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that, God. I like what Riley just said there. Your prodigal love, your recklessly extravagant love for us. I pray that would, just as we prayed just a couple hours ago, really, that would be more real and even felt and experienced in these moments, in just the way that we need to, in a way that would draw us to you. It's not really just about us feeling better. It's really more about you, knowing you. This is really a story about your prodigal love. So what a great thought. Amen. Okay, so we're in Act 2, returning to the heart of the Father. So coming home, the home is the heart of the Father. I'll read this to get us back. We just did this. So verse 13, just to remind us where we're picking up on. Many days later, the younger son gathered together all he had after he sold everything at bargain basement quick prices. and he traveled to a distant country where he squandered his estate in foolish living. So, as we keep discovering, there's more going on than we realize. So somebody pick this up for us and read it. Again, from Kenneth Bailey's book.
First century Jewish custom dictated that if a Jewish boy lost family inheritance among the Gentiles and dared to return home, the community would bring a large pot in front of him and cry out, "So and so has cut off from his people," or is cut off.
Is cut off, right.
This ceremony was called the Kazazah.
Sure.
Literally, the cutting off. After it was performed, the community would have nothing to do with the wayward person.
Yeah, so the stakes are super, super high. So just keep that in mind as the son is in the other country. He knows if he comes back, this is facing him. So it will influence some of his actions, okay? So now let's jump into Luke 15, verse 14. It says, after he had spent everything, a severe famine struck that country and he had nothing. So once again, this would be kind of a negative use of prodigal. When we use it towards God, it's kind of positive. But we have this son really living in a prodigal way, in a wastefully or recklessly extravagant way, using his resources unwisely. So again, just to give you a picture, he had spent everything. He knows he's cut off from the family. He's cut off from the village. At least that's what he expects. He's far away from home. He has nothing. So let's just see a few thoughts. What do you think? How would you feel if you were the younger son at this point? In light of everything that's gone on, the choices you've made, what do you think? Lonely. Yeah, definitely. What's that? Yes. I don't know what was that you, Corey? I was trying to find them. Yeah, stupid. Why? I think we probably say, but why don't you explain it a little more?
Well, we thought it was going to be fun and great, and now I'm hungry and I thought there wouldn't be a famine.
Right. Who plans for famines? Yeah. Corey is preparing for any eventuality. There will be a session afterwards for preparing for fill in the blank. Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of the first thought that came to my mind too, Corey. I would feel really stupid. Any other thought? Yeah, okay, so yeah. The third, come on, I needed more than a third, right? What else? Say again.
Crap, I made a mistake.
Crap, I made a mistake. What do I do now? Yeah, all of that, and maybe more. So I guess we haven't said this, but it's key to keep in mind, this is a Jewish family. He's gone far away to Gentile territory. So that hasn't been clearly stated, but that's the assumption. So this plays into how he probably felt. What does he think, at least, that is going to face him if he returns home? He thinks he's going to have to face the village, where he has broken relationship with and is despised by everyone. So that's daunting. He thinks he's going to have to endure his elder brother's scorn. And like we said earlier, that may be part of the reason why he left to begin with, was living with a very unpleasant elder brother. That's unclear. But anyway, he knows if he returns, he's going to have to deal with his elder brother's scorn and, key point, live off of his elder brother's inheritance. Remember, the father gave the inheritance to both sons. The younger son squandered his third. All that's left is 2/3 of the original. And it's technically, the father still has rights to oversee it and do all this, but it's been entrusted to the elder brother. So technically it's his elder brother. So the younger son has nothing left. So he's got to go back and cast himself, if he goes back, cast himself on his older brother's mercies, good graces, if he has any. And then in his mind, he also definitely is thinking he's going to have to face the wrath of his father. So he's not so eager to go home. So, even though he has nothing, famine has struck, it says, next verse 15, then he went to work for one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. It's a little, sounds kind of like, you just went and found a job. Actually, this word here, went to work for, it's the Greek word kalao, which means to glue or to join or to cling to. What is really pictured here is, so you may, if you've traveled overseas to certain types of countries, you may have experienced this yourself. Sorry, I'm all hung up here. So when I've experienced it a few times, but the one that stands out to me is in India. As soon as we got off the plane, start to get into our taxi and everything, there are tons of people there, and all these guys are forcing themselves upon us they're grabbing our bags, like they're not saying, oh, can I take your bag? No, they're grabbing our bags, and they're not stealing them, thankfully. They're grabbing them and they're loading them in the car for us, and they're doing all this stuff aggressively. They are clinging to, joining themselves to us, which, of course, what are they expecting whenever they're done? They're expecting us to give them some payment. That is really more what's going on here. This younger son clings to a person in this foreign land, forces himself upon him like the guys at the Indian airport. And, that's not always wanted. So that's kind of the picture of what we have in mind, or what Jesus has in mind here. So he became an unwanted attachment of one of the citizens in this Gentile country. And I think we know he's an unwanted attachment because, go back and look again, remember he's Jewish, the younger son. Pigs are evil, pigs are dirty, stay away from them, it'll make you unclean. And so what does the citizen of this country do? He tries to send this new unwanted attachment to go to the fields and feed his pigs. Why does he do that? Because he knows he won't want to do that, and that will hopefully get rid of him. So the citizen in the faraway country, and culturally, he's trying to get rid of his unwanted attachment without a direct confrontation, which is very Eastern culture. Like we talked earlier, the father and the younger son couldn't, culturally, it wasn't appropriate for them to deal head on with their disagreement. They needed an intermediary, a mediator. Typically in Eastern cultures, there's not a lot of straight on collision fights, disagreements. You don't just tell someone you're fired, out of here. You give them a job they don't want to do, hoping they'll quit, so you don't have to face them head on and cause anybody to lose face. So that's almost certainly what's going on. So he's desperate. He's really like a beggar, attaching himself to this citizen. Verse 16 says, he longed to eat his fill from the pods that the pigs were eating, which, by the way, he didn't do that because he couldn't. These pods, human stomachs can't process those. You can't eat them, but that was like, he was so hungry and desperate, even those undigestible pods were appealing to him. And no one would give him anything. Pretty straightforward, but how would you describe the younger son's situation? Comes to mind. What adjectives, thoughts, feelings come to mind for you? Desperate? Dire? Another word with D, anybody? Third D word? Desperate, dire. Dysentery? What did somebody say that? Somebody said something serious over here, though. Pitiful? Yeah, I'm sure we could keep going with all those synonyms, but yeah, desperate, dire, pitiful situation. I mean, truly desperate. So that's where he finds himself. And so remember, going back, remember what he faces. Like, so far, it's better to be unclean, dealing with pigs, starving to death, than going home. But it's getting real bad. So now, somebody read this. He has a different train of thought.
He came to his senses. He said, how many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food? And here I am dying of hunger. I'll get up, go to my father, and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired workers.
Okay, so we're going to unpack this and talk about it, but what do you think of his plan? Do you think he has fully come to his senses? What do you like about his plan? What do you not like about his plan? Questions do you have? So that's kind of the question. There's what the plan was if you need refreshment. What do you think?
He does seem to have a little bit of humility.
Okay.
Right, like knowing that he's no longer worthy to be called his son.
Okay. Facing up to his own choices a little bit there. Food move, is that what you said? Yeah.
Like, it's just like so desperate, like what's my path of
How do I get some food? Yeah. Yeah, when you're that hungry, like you'll try, it's desperate, right? Yeah. You don't like he has what? I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, the make me one of your hired workers? Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, don't worry about getting culture stuff right. Like, doesn't matter. We'll walk through it.
I mean, he is a little presumptuous that his father would take him back at all, even to be.
Okay.
Like, why don't you go back to your father? Culturally, you know, I'm no longer part of the family. Like, why not try to find a different family or area that knows nothing about you or your past or what you've done?
So it's kind of gutsy that he would even think to go back. Like, even though he's saying I'm not your son, it's like, well.
Yeah, in some ways, this shows the depth of his desperation even more than wanting to eat the pods. Like, this is my last resort. Last resort. It didn't say, did it? I mean, I don't remember seeing anything. After some time had passed. Nobody's looking at their Bibles because I told you not to open your Bibles, right? How many times have you heard a teacher say that?
It sounds a little bit.
Okay, how so?
Well, you kind of walk through, my father's hired workers are doing better than me, so what I'm going to do is go back and say, hey, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
Make me like one of them.
Yeah. What's the ultimate plan you see there for him trying to get accepted, restored, whatever? Or is there even a plan to be restored? What do you think his end hope is of this move? Yeah.
I'm sure he loves to be with his family.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, definitely as a food move. I like that. I'll try to use that phrase a few times in my life. It's a food move.
I think it kind of shows the father's wisdom because in the Act 1, when you said that kind of the reason that he went ahead and gave him the inheritance was for the hope of reconciliation in the future. And so the fact that the father was soft enough in his response to the son to give him this, probably gave the son some kind of confidence to come back to him.
Just a little open door, maybe. Yeah, I think that's possibly true. Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for it says I'm no longer worthy to call yourself. That's a really desperate.
Yeah.
I mean, what did he use his right as the son was to command his inheritance and everything right?
Yeah.
So for him to be turning, he's willing to say, I no longer worthy.
Yeah.
To me, it says that even he, in all of his drunken, stupid idiocy, couldn't even see.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you can read that sentence like kind of like Susan, I think, was referring to it like it is I totally screwed up. I cast myself on your mercies. Or you can just read it straight up like, hey, I'm no longer, this father-son thing is over. I realize I'm going to take on basically a slave master, worker master, worker boss relationship with you. So yeah, it's interesting. A lot of folks look at it pretty quickly and think, oh, this is like a big repentance move for him. I don't think it's fully repentant yet. I think he's still got a plan how to figure his life out. So I kind of agree. We're going to, I think here, Mr. Bailey has some more thoughts. Somebody read that for us.
Restoration to the family and community was only possible, he assumed, after he paid back the money he had lost, though he had no marketable skills. Hence his plan to seek job training so that he could join the work. His plan to seek job training so that he could join the workforce.
Yeah.
Only then could he save his money, like other craftsmen, compensate for his losses, and one day again take his place in the family and the community.
Yes, I mean, that kind of strikes a chord with me with all of it together. It seems like, yeah, I'm going to go back and I'm going to work, just make me a worker. I'm going to go and live as a worker, make money, pay you back so I can restore myself. All those words aren't there, so there's a little bit of assumption, but I like Bailey's thoughts. So I'll read this one. Sadly, the prodigal does not yet understand the nature of his sin. I think this is the key point for sure. He thinks the issue is the lost money, but it isn't. It's the father's broken heart. The problem is not the broken law, but the broken relationship. So his plan includes these additional details. If he's going to go back and he's going to be like one of the hired workers, this is kind of what life as a hired worker would be like. He's going to live away from his brother and his father. He's going to live in the workers' headquarters, or quarters, not headquarters. So he's not going to be around his brother and father in any kind of intimate way. He's embracing a distant servant-master relationship with his father, best we can tell. Sonship is over. And I would say he's not really going home to the father's heart, but I think he's still got a plan to try to buy him off by getting a little job, making up for it, making money, and buying his way back. So we'll see how that plays out. I think some of these conclusions I come to based off of how the later interaction goes. So let's kind of hang in there. So verse 20, he got up. Desperation got to the point where he was ready to face the kazaza ceremony and all that went with it. He was okay with living as if he wasn't his father's son and living with the servants. So he got up and went to his father. Okay. We've studied a little bit about Middle Eastern culture today. I think we've kind of painted the picture of what the culture is kind of like. So imagine you're hearing this for the first time, and you're a person steeped in traditional Middle Eastern culture, like the audience, listening to Jesus. What type of response do you think the audience is expecting from the Father? How's he supposed to respond when his son gets back? Tell him off? Yeah. Just gonguzo him to death, right? Just pow. Yeah.
Smash the pot over his head.
Yeah. Kazaza ceremony on steroids. Yeah.
I wonder if he would be still saddened by it, like still respecting the culture and the idea of like, yeah, you're no longer, you can't be my son. But maybe he'd be broken about it. Just be
Yeah.
like, I'm so sorry, but you gotta go. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, he seems like a loving father. And so I don't know if it'd be fully rage, but more just sadness.
Yeah. For sure, I think sadness would. Yeah. Sadness would always be there, but if a Middle Eastern father were to accept him back, we'll see this in a little bit actually, because it's what happens. He's taking shame on himself. Like, you've got to defend your own. It's kind of hard, I think, for me at least, for us to understand, like, how strongly you have to avoid any sense of public shame, especially as a patriarch, leader in the community, clearly a wealthy person in the community. So even, I'm sure, if he cared about his son, he's sad, but he's got to come down hard. Any other thoughts? Yeah. That's right on track, Joy. So we'll jump right into this. So here's kind of the culturally appropriate process for something like this that would happen. Son comes back home. The father would remain aloof in the house. You can see some of this in the story of, oh my gosh, I'm blanking out. David and his son Absalom. When his son Absalom violates David's honor, David makes him live away from the family, and for a really long time won't accept Absalom back, won't even talk to him. That's in the Old Testament. You could read about that. Michael, do you have a thought or question? Aloof, ignoring, pretending like he doesn't exist, not approachable, not engaged, etc. Yeah, no, good question. Thank you. Yeah, his father would remain aloof, disconnected, not acknowledging the son's presence. Taking their cue from the father, this is just kind of what would happen. The village would heap scorn and abuse upon the son because his actions, not only saying, I wish you were dead, Dad, give me my inheritance, but then going and squandering that in Gentile territory of all places, it shamed and brought dishonor on the father, and by extension, it brought dishonor on actually the whole village. And so this son coming back is like a representation of all bad stuff. We can't allow him to have any standing in our village. So again, try to imagine everything that happens publicly. There's public ramifications for every choice, every action. So when he comes back, the son knows not only is he going to have to face his dad, his older brother, all that stuff, he's got to face the village, and inevitably these pack of boys that are always running around in these Middle Eastern villages just causing a ruckus. We'll just call it that. And they would be freely heaping abuse on the son, even on the road as he heads back into town. And then the son would have to sit outside the gate of the family's property before the father would summon him, and you don't know how long that's going to be. So again, disconnection, clearly communicating the message, you are not a part of us. You got to pay your dues. And then when, or if really, but when the father summoned him, he would face the father's wrath. He would need to plead for forgiveness and then beg for a menial job in the village. So the son's plan that he just shared, that we just read about and talked about, it's not like it's a crazy plan. It's what would be expected if he comes back. Endure great shame, and then the best you can hope for is begging for a menial job somewhere. Nonetheless, knowing all that, he got up and went to his father. But here's where you know the story, but this is if you're hearing it for the first time, this is when it's jaws dropping, this is crazy, what's going on? He got up and went to his father, but, big but, while the son was still a long way off, I guess his father either had people looking or he could see real good, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. That word filled with compassion there, it's not, I don't know how you read that, but a lot of times I read it, it's oh, that poor guy. Feel bad for him. Now this word, again, let's get all Greeky. Splanchnizomai, another exciting word. Splanchnizomai, which I keep getting this word in my teachings because it was in one of the teachings I did in Mark about Jesus healing the leper. Jesus was filled with compassion. It means to be moved in the inward parts. In other words, to truly feel compassion, but a compassion that compels action, which is what happened with Jesus with healing the lepers, as I taught about a few months ago. As he looked out on the crowds and had compassion on them, that's the same word, compassion that compels, or feeling that compels action. Now it's going to get really cool in the Middle Eastern setting because it starts getting crazy for them. So he is not only filled with compassion, but this compassion, this splanchnizomai, compelled him to act, and he ran. I read past that real fast. He ran. It's not only cool that he ran, but it's crazy that a patriarch in Middle Eastern culture would run. So let's read about this. Somebody read this.
It's not just a slow shuffle or a fast walk. He races. In the Middle East, a man of his age and position always walks in a slow, dignified fashion. It's safe to assume that he has not run anywhere for any purpose for 40 years.
Yeah, just let that sink in. The guy ain't been running. He's going to pull something. Michael, he's going to be hurting like us.
No villager over the age of 25 ever runs. Yes, okay.
Well, some of us are moving to Middle Eastern villages right now.
But now the father races down the road. To do so, he must take the front edge of his robe in his hand like a teenager.
Yeah, so picture that. Yeah, they're not wearing their Nike running shorts. They got their big long robes on, hanging down. It's got to pull it up, prop it up. What's the proper term? Okay, Heidi's going to demonstrate for us. Yeah, bundles it up and runs. Jennifer, would you mind continuing to read? Yeah, everybody can envision it.
When he does this, his legs show in what is considered a humiliating posture. All of this is painfully shameful for him.
Yeah, these guys, they don't show their legs. So, like even now when people like our sons or others go on mission trips or whatever, if you go to Eastern cultures, like you wear pants, you don't wear shorts, especially guys. Women too. So him running is not just like a throwaway comment. It's like he ran, and not just reading it, but imagine like the actual, even though this is just a parable, this actually happening. Like people are watching him doing that. The village is around. The kids, those crazy boys, probably have spotted the son as well. They're ready to go lay into him. And then here comes this dude running with his robe pulled up. Pretty amazing. Okay, keep reading if you don't mind, ma'am.
When he does this, his legs show.
You already read that. After the yellow.
The laborers in the street will be distracted from tormenting the prodigal and will instead run after the father, amazed at seeing this respected village elder shaming himself publicly.
Yeah.
It is,
Yep,
it
right
is
there.
his compassion that leads the father to race out to his son. He knows what his son will face in the village.
Yeah, he knows the shame, the kazaza ceremony, and everything else that's coming. And so to keep his son from facing all the shame that the village is going to bring upon him, that his oldest son, the elder brother, is going to bring upon him, the father. So it's really like the traditional or maybe kind of simple way, at least I've historically read this. It's still cool. Like the father runs out to him. Like that'd be really awesome for my dad to run out to me. I mean, I don't know if he'd make it. He doesn't run very far. But it would be pretty sweet. But like there's so much going on. Like the father's intentionally not only excited to see him, but it's an intentional move to deflect shame from his son, which the son more than deserves, right? And to take it upon himself. Like, it's almost like, I mean, he didn't, but it's almost like he's stripped naked and streaked out there. That's how much attention he's pulling to himself in this setting. And it's his compassion that leads him to do it. Yeah, so he takes upon himself the shame and the humiliation that's due the prodigal son. Pretty dang sweet. So then we're back to the son. Somebody want to read that one?
So he got up and went to his father. The eldest son was still a long way off. His father saw him and was filled.
Oh, we already did that. Sorry. You can keep going though. My bad.
He's filled with compassion. Did we read that?
Yeah. You'll finish it though.
He's filled with compassion. He ran, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering how that. Sorry. Thank you for reading again though. So he not only ran, but he ran, got to him, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him repeatedly. It's pretty tender, pretty affectionate, pretty prodigal moment, like wastefully extravagant. Just crazy. The son, I'll read this one. The son said to him, Father, so remember we just looked at his planned speech, right? Kind of remember the planned speech. I'm not worthy to be called your son, but then I'm going to become a hired worker and all that stuff. And he says, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. So let's just tease this out a little bit. What do you notice about this response when he sees his dad making a fool of himself for him? What do you see or notice about this response versus his rehearsed plan? What's missing? What's still there?
It seems to be much more with that.
Okay, why do you say that?
It's not asking for anything in return, it just accepts that it's like, I'm fitting wrong with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. We don't see any plan.
It's like it's more tender.
Yeah. Probably shocked. Totally shocked. This is not what I expected to meet when I came back. This is not who I expected to see. Any other thoughts? I mean, I think that captures it. Because it seems to me that he's given up on his payback plan. So his plan before really, I think, was to go earn money and pay back the money or carve out an existence for himself on his own. Now he's just, kind of like Justin's saying, he is casting himself upon his father's heart, on his mercy. Extravagant, generous, prodigal kind of love pulls that out of people. It's like, I don't know. I've done worse than I even thought I had done, and I don't deserve this. But you seem like someone I can just entrust myself to. So he does. That's really obviously how God responds to us. And it's not over yet. The Father's not done. The Father told his servants, quick, bring out the best robe and put it on him. The best robe is, you probably can figure it out, it's Dad's, the Father's own robe of honor. And he's like, take my robe, which I would guess he's wearing, but maybe he's got a better robe he doesn't wear every day. Probably got another robe. It's not a strip show for Dad, hopefully. You've done enough, Father. Yeah, you've shown your legs. Now you're all right. So yeah, the Father's own robe, probably a robe that's for like special occasions. Yeah, so he's like, bring out my best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his finger. This ring is almost certainly the family's signet ring, which was used to sign important documents. And it represents just the power, the authority of the family. Pretty cool. Sorry, you want that? You're welcome. And then he says, put sandals on his feet, which means he wasn't wearing sandals because he was like a slave, and actually he was like lower than the lowliest slave. He was in bad, bad shape. So the sandals were a sign of sonship because slaves went without sandals. So this is pretty sweet. Let's just put this all together, what the Father's doing. This is calculated. It's beautifully complete. The village would see the robe, the Father's special robe, at the feast, and would know that the Son was restored relationally to the Father. The elder brother would see the signet ring and know that his brother was reinstated with the authority of the family. He might not like it, but he is. And the slaves would see that this one who entered the village today looking like less than the worst slave is actually a full-blown, beloved son. How did all that come about? Only one could pull it together. The Father. Only the Father was able to do all this. The Son was totally helpless to get himself to this spot. All the Son was able to do is to get himself into a miserable position. Only the Father could restore this kind of honor, this kind of grace, this kind of mercy upon the Son. And that'll preach, as they say. That's pretty sweet. Father's not done. He says, then bring the fattened calf and slaughter it, and let's celebrate with a feast. Because this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. The fattened calf is exactly what you would imagine the fattened calf is. It's a calf that has been fattened intentionally for a feast. Meat in village life was, as it still is in most of the world, is a precious commodity. And this was the prized grain-fed beef that they have been preparing for a future feast. And not only does the father just put up with the son and say, all right, fine, you can come back into the household. No, he's like, we're going to slaughter this thing we've been preparing and we're going to have a feast. I mean, this is a different kind of prodigal action. This is a wastefully or recklessly extravagant move with the father's resources, driven by love. Pretty sweet stuff. So we're going to draw it to a close here, and then we'll be able to talk about this, because this is the end of the second act. Some reflections for you, for me. So I propose that part of the son's restoration involved him giving up on his payback plans. And I think it's a question that kind of begs for us to think about from the text is, what ways do you need to give up on your payback plans? The way you're maybe trying to appease God or make him happy with you based off of what you do. God receives us. We can approach the throne of grace with confidence and find grace and mercy to help in our time of need because of what Christ has done, not because of our own payback plans. What about this? What about the father's heart that you have seen in this story? What about his heart and his action most moves you currently? So reflect on that. And then maybe this one's definitely worth pondering. What are you struggling to believe is really true about God and about you from this story? Do you really see God like the Father in this story? No matter how messed up you are, and we're all messed up, no matter how far you've wandered, and we all have wandered and do wander, he's running out, taking shame on himself for us, and ready to throw a feast. So that's what I've got. Or if you have any other questions, comments, or testimonies, feel free to share those as well. Or if you want to reflect on those and share about that, you are welcome to do so as well. What thoughts do you guys have?
This story today reminds me, of like the story in the Old Testament book of Hosea, like Hosea and Gomer.
Right.
Where I know it's like God's picture for his love for Israel. There's also really precious just to read that story and how she was bought out of prostitution and then she kept bringing back to it.
Yeah.
And he would bring her back and then she went back to it. Like every time he would take her back and love her and, wouldn't, he was obedient to doing that, one, but also loved her regardless of her straying and going back to that.
Just like extravagant, crazy, seems like foolish kind of love, right? Yeah, and that you're right. That's those of you listening on the recording, Heidi was just talking about is similar to the story of Hosea. Hosea and him, God calling him to show his love to Gomer, even when she kept going back into prostitution. I mean, it's otherworldly, crazy, prodigal love, recklessly extravagant. Yeah, good thought. Other thoughts?
I think it's a comfort for believers through the story.
Yeah.
I think there's this notion that like once you start following Jesus, you're not going to struggle anymore, if you're not going to close your work, you're not going to screw up. And it's like, well, he was a son who walked away.
Yeah.
When he returned, he was still a son.
Yeah.
And you know he was still a son because they were following after.
Yeah.
For believers who have gone away or made that decision, it's like, you can always return back to the Father. He's always going to be excited that you return back to him. However close to you come to his shit, wherever you're at,
Yeah.
he's just excited to get back. And
Yeah.
that's such a comfort. It's not we follow Jesus and then he's great. It's we follow Jesus and you're where you son.
Yeah.
And he's always going to go to he wants us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that connection, Jason, too, that you kind of just alluded to there. But like the younger son. So Jesus wasn't like the younger son in the sense he wasn't disrespectful, telling his God the Father he wishes he was dead or whatever. But he intentionally left home because we had left, and he came and he, unlike the younger son, took on shame for us and returned to the Father, and the Father celebrates him. So there's so many different connections with this story. It's amazing. Other thoughts or reflections?
Are you thinking about Jason's teaching the last couple of weeks about God's ultimate purpose is for his own glory?
Yeah.
That same God is still the compassionate
Yeah.
being in the story.
Yeah. Yeah. So his in the way he brings glory to himself, or to bring glory really means to reveal or make yourself known. The way he does that most fully is through this. I mean, the parable, but through what Jesus has done. Yeah. It's not through just whipping everybody into shape. It's through extravagant, prodigal love, going to the end for those who have rebelled against him. Yeah. It's a good thought, Tanner.
So often in our own heads, I know I am all the time where I think I know what somebody's response is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just go into it saying, I'm going to say this, and they're going to say this.
Right. Got it rehearsed.
Yeah, I've got it all rehearsed, and then when it doesn't, it's like, wow, that was really good.
Yeah.
It didn't turn out that way. And so I'm struck by that, like the son had this all planned out, thought this is how it's going to go, and it didn't. And it completely went the other way.
Yeah. Caused him to surrender his plan.
Right.
Or recognize it was a pitiful one. Yeah. Compared to what he was receiving from his father. Yeah.
I feel like the second point, like, what about the Father's heart moves you?
Yeah.
Like, Jesus is telling the story about the Father, and we're all like, I will show his ways, like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus has his mind, like, oh, you want to see, like, the nakedness of a leg, like, I'll be naked.
Yeah,
That's
fully.
the level I'm going to go to, because I think this is his guy. Like,
Yeah.
Something like that's,
yeah. Publicly shamed.
Yeah.
Even more. Yeah.
What we say about him totally missing the point with his plan is really interesting. It's like, yeah, whether it was a parent plan or anything, it was like, it had nothing to do with relationship, but then
Yeah.
nothing to do with like, oh, I broke that relationship, or broke my father's heart, like things like that. There's nothing about like restoring, like relationally,
Yeah.
like apologizing to his father, for what I'm sure the father endured, like because of that. It was more just like, let's make this right for the optics, sort of.
Sure.
And so I thought that was really interesting to kind of like go against that, and that it actually has nothing to do with what the father cared about in the slightest. Like, he would have been just as devastated to have him be apart and a servant and whatever. It's like that helps nothing.
Yeah, he wants his son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That is pretty cool. Very cool. Anybody else?
I think what we've been going through in Galatians House Church and also like with GT and now this, like breaking down, growing up, I knew that it's not performance based, we're saved by faith and not by works. And yet, it has always felt like you have to act a certain way. And so I think just like, it feels like all of these different pages are telling me the same story. And I'm realizing that maybe I have had more like a scale or a checklist of things that I need to do or perform a certain way in faith or in relationships with other people.
Yeah.
So, it feels like God's trying to break that down. cool. That's a little scary.
A little discombobulating, yeah. Yeah, it's familiar. Even if not fully good, it's still familiar. There's some comfort there. Yeah, it's almost like the Bible's all connected together. Yeah. It's really cool to see how it is. Really cool. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else have a thought? Well, let's talk to the Father, the one who runs after us, takes shame upon himself for us.
God, thank you for this picture of just being a prodigal God
Mm-hmm.
and the wasteful using of resources extravagantly on us. Makes me realize just how much I don't deserve it and how much gratitude I have for you and just your love for us in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for just that. Jesus did what he did us, took on just like it was in the way that he died for us. Yeah, just thinking that he did that constantly takes confidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Father, the fact that we even think that some of these moves by the Father or moves you made, Jesus, are wasteful or recklessly extravagant probably just reveals how far our view of love falls short of what true love really is and the way you relate. So thank you for giving us this picture. Thanks for all the detail and all the nuances and things that we can discover by being learners, and not just for knowledge's sake, but that what you really want is our heart. You want relationship with us. And so just like the original audience struggled to respond, I know we will even outside of this moment, but pray that this image would be brought to mind of you running out to us, hugging us, kissing us repeatedly, taking shame upon yourself that was due to us. So we're just grateful for your extravagant love for us, and grateful for this time to be together. Amen.